7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
Hey everybody, this is Darren with Trailside Stew.
How you guys doing today?
We're going to do a quick little build video. Well, I actually doubt it's going to be quick, but we'll fast forward through all the boring stuff and try to get you the best knowledge we can. Stewie, what are we doing today?
Well, we're taking Big D's honcho, and we're going to be installing the aluminum 4-link kit on there. And then we're going to be taking, in another video, we're going to have up, we're going to be doing the Wraith steel gear transmission gear upgrade on it. And we're going to be doing the replacement of the diff gears. Luckily, the SCX 10 and the Wraith both actually share the same transmission gears and the same diff gears. However, you keep in mind, if you're doing this yourself, they do use different link kits. So make sure you get the right one for your wheelbase.
Very good. And actually, I think we're replacing the transmission gears in the honcho because we left the ones in the Wraith.
That's
so
correct.
That's what we're looking at, and we'll get started on those. I should probably clean it up real quick before the video. So we'll get that cleaned up, and we'll get her on the bench. And Stewie's going to walk you through what to do.
Stu here. We're going to go ahead and tear down Big D's trail honcho. We're going to be installing the aluminum SCX 10 kit for the 4-link on the 12.3 inch wheelbase. So let's go ahead and get to work, man. Let's go ahead and set our parts off to the side so we can know where all of our things are. Take a little quick look at the manual. Now, I've done this once before on my honcho, and it's a little bit repetitive, but the instructions do help a lot for setting up all your links in the proper area. Now, at this point in time, you can always decide whether you want to stay with the 3-link setup or the 4-link. Personally, I've found that the 3-link system is a little bit faulted because the center link post on the axle tends to wallow out and gets really sloppy. The 4-link I've had great success with, good articulation on there, and it just seems to hold together a lot better. So let's go ahead and look at our manual here. We're going to grab all our little pieces here. Axial's been really good about how they number everything, and notice down here they're saying it's ×2, so that's meaning 2 per the upper links, which are different than the front and rear uppers, and lower links are going to be different in the front and rear also. So make sure you pay attention to that. So we've managed to find Darren's 4-link mount for his axle. We were just discussing a minute ago. Sean and I both, with our SCX 10s, have had 4-links on them for a good long while. Yet Darren's has been stock for a while, which has got a 3-link on the front and a 4-link on the rear. We've noticed that he's gone places that we can't, and we're pretty well set up with our systems. So right now we're going to go ahead and put the 4-link system on Darren's car, and we're going to see how it crawls after that. If it turns out that it does have a limiting factor to it, then we're going to go ahead and swap back over to the 3-link and just repair the slop when it comes to it. So I'm going to set this right off to the side, and we're going to start building into the links. So according to the assembly system here, we've got to go with parts tree 8005 for the 1-link set, and also on 8005 parts tree for the back. Now you do need to look and notice, I hope you can see if we can do this here, there are certain link ends that are bent, and bent in a certain way to fit up in the chassis. If you're looking at the picture with me here, this is the front of the axle itself, and this will be the mid of the upper links to the chassis right up by the transmission. These sit inside the frame rails themselves and are bolted inward, so you do need to use what bent ends it's calling for, or it won't fit and you'll get hang up and binding in your system. So let's go ahead and hunt those down. Grab my special hobby knife here. I'm gonna pull 4 of these out. These just roll out and twist. Very easy to pull out of the trees. You want to try and get the fatter part of the ball end on the outside near the nut, so you have less chance of the rod end itself slipping out in the event. Look at it. If you think about, if you look over your truck first, the chassis bar is going to be sitting on this side. You're going to bend over into the center. So you want to take the fat end, put it on the what would be, I guess, inside, somewhat like that. So you notice on both of these, they're both bent inward, and I've got the space for the nut to go on the outside, so it's got a good place and they won't push off. One thing I like doing that makes life a lot easier on this is taking your threaded link in first and threading it into the ball end. That way when you put your links together, you can just screw and everything just fits nice and perfect. Now I'm not going to really explain all this through the video itself. It's going to be the same on every link. But I usually give about halfway out on the rod end. You'll feel it getting really tight, and you want to stop just about there. You don't want to try and push through. You'll end up busting the link, causing a wink point, and then the piece is just going to fall apart. All right, so I've gotten all 4 of the rod ends done here. I did want to mention that I'm using a driver instead of a drill because of the fact that the drill can always overpower it, and you'll end up messing everything up. All right, so I know that Axial does not label their bags, so you do have to do a bit of a fitment sizing on here. The good thing is that all their links and in their instructions, they are almost identical to the exact sizes you're going to need and the amount of ones you're going to have to use itself. So when it shows a certain screw, you can take your screw itself, which I don't have that open. Let's just use a rod in here. So we're looking for one that's about yay long, and that matches up pretty dang well. And that would be what I would consider the right length there. So, and then we're looking for a longer one. And that lines up. All right, let's get to finishing this up. Now we're going to look at here and verify that I've got the fat end here. And we need to twist this just a little bit more. Don't try and over twist these. They are plastic and they will expand out. Since this end's going into the 4-link itself, the 4-link bracket right here, I don't know. It really won't matter which way the fat end is going. So there's number 1. Let's get on number 2. I truthfully wouldn't use pliers on these. I'll mar them up so bad they'll look horrible. You want them to look like they're trail ridden, not tool ridden. Alright. Let's fix this a little bit. Alright. There's our 2 links. Go ahead and throw it on this one brace real quick. Now these links go on the inner side, and make sure that you're facing the right direction if you're putting this together off the truck. We're going to do it this way right now so that it's sometimes easier, because these trying to do this on the vehicle itself can be a rather tricky situation. Now you don't want it tight, you just want it snuggish. Okay, so we're just going to hold nicely with the screw or the nut here. Alright, that's nice and snug, but not too much, and move nice and easy. And there we go. We got our upper 4-link done. Now there will be some slight adjustment. As you can see, my ends are off a little bit. That can be done in the vehicle when you're actually installing, and we'll go over that later. So now we're going to go into the back one, and it's basically the same process. Alright, so looking at our diagram here, we've got another set of bent links up top and a set of straight links on the back for the straight end on the bottom side, or back side, axle side, however you want to call it. There's one. And there's 2. Okay, again, we're going to look at this, verify that the fat end of the ball is on the would be inner side or whatever, and that our other links are straight. Tweak that just a hair. That's good. And then do that one a little bit. Alright, so there's our back uppers. Let's continue on to the rest of it. So same basic concept. Alright, now here what we're looking at is we're trying to figure out what we're going to need for the if you're looking at here, you can see that the axle has got the knuckles on it on the outside. That is the front steering system there, so you know that you're working with the front axle itself. and they're calling for the 98 millimeter lower links down here, and it'll just have 2 straight rod ends on it. And there's 2. So there are our front lowers. As you can see here, these are the 106 I was explaining before. These are the lower links. And if you look at the way the manual is set up here, like you saw in the rest of the pictures, if you're extending it again, you would put a link difference between right here if you would like, or you can put it up top so it's up in the chassis and it looks a little cleaner down below, so it looks like a full solid link itself. But trying to find something that's like, let's just say you're adding 20 to the 106 millimeters, Axial does not make 126 millimeter solid shaft, so it's easier and cheaper most of the time to just get the extensions, because your rig might be just a hair off. And they do sell these little guys right here. I don't know if you can see that real well, but this is what looks like to be at least a 1 or 2 millimeter spacer. And if all you need to do is extend it just by that much, you can get a couple of these, and you know, you can get Axial has longer screw ends like this, but you'll just put it in the middle and it'll give you that little extra extension itself, and you can stack them on there. You really want to try and keep, that might be a little bit too small amount of threads in there, and I'm glad that Axial actually makes longer ones of these right here. So of the screws themselves, I think they make them in 2 lengths. Can't remember off the top of my head, but you can extend your wheelbase just by doing spacers if you would like, if it's that little of amount. So as you can see here, these are actually 2 different sizes. Like I was saying, this is probably a 1 millimeter, this is probably a 2 millimeter. And then when you get up to 3+ millimeters, they start doing them in little rods. I believe this is probably a 5 millimeter setup. At least that's what they call it. I'm not 100% sure it's exactly 5, but you can add these in and just extend the wheelbase just enough to be able to make it fit your body properly. All right, so we're going to go ahead and put these 106 links together. Alright, we've got our back links done. We got our front links, and like I said, they are difference in length. And there's a lot of people keep asking me at the store, what is the length of the steering rod? Because some people like using the plastic links all the time. They do buckle after a while, but the steering link itself is 106 millimeters link for the SCX 10s now. Alright, so we've got all of our parts together, all of our links are done. Go ahead and lay it out. There's our steering system. We got our there we go. Rear lowers. We got our rear uppers. And then we got our front lowers. And then, like I said, we've already got that on the front uppers on the 4 link. Right, now that we got that done, folks, we're going to go ahead and pull off the links themselves. And we're going to go ahead and use our other driver here. Now we're going to have a nut on the inside of this, so I can grab my pliers here. Now you can keep that in there, and then that way your link is free, so where you can easily get it off. And sorry about that, folks. We had a dead battery go out there, so we're going to go ahead and get back to work on this. Pull the links out themselves. You can easily push past the drive shaft itself. All right, so we got the 4 links themselves off. We're still stuck by the actual suspension itself, and you just unscrew those. Go ahead and take the other side off. Go ahead and pull these links off. Alright, so that's slid out nice and easy. So we're going to grab, as we explained before, the 106 millimeters were the lower links, which is what we're working on now. Now you can choose right now if you want Axial to sit down below there, or however. I'm going to go ahead and set it up for Darren with the Axial showing, just because I like that look. I like the way it looks. So go ahead and slide this in here. And like I said, the fat part doesn't matter too much. I'll go ahead and turn this link a little bit. You always want to try and screw inward if you're going to swap a link, or pop the ball. If I can get it to pop. Come on, baby. And there it goes flying. All right, great. Luckily, I had a spare laying around here. That's another thing, folks. These things will pop out pretty dang easily. So, all right, we're going to put the axial on the outside, which means I'm going to put the fat part on the inside. All right. I'm going to squeeze that in there. It takes a little bit just to get it in, but other than that, it's pretty easy. Alright, so sometimes these like to easily pull out like that one did. The other one was not as easy. So, go ahead and install this one. Flip the flat part of this around, so that we can stick the axial on the outside. Alright, lower link's done. Look very beautiful, awesome. Axial is actually sitting out to the side where I wanted it to, well, for the most part. Now we're going to go ahead and work on the upper link, which is basically the same thing, just pull it out and install it. Alright, so we've gotten the upper links out and grab the rear ones that we made, the longer versions of them. And now, like I said, you got to remember that they may look the same here, but you want to have the bend so that they bend outward, because you're going to have it sitting right there. So you want to make sure that the bend's on the outside of it. Alright, so all the links are installed on here. Let's go ahead and grab the chassis and we'll go. Alright, so the easiest way to start this off is to obviously flip your axle upside down, but I find that doing your drive shaft first, and there's only one way it does go. If you got some little stuff in there, you know, make sure it kind of clears out. The drive shaft should slide in very smooth. There's usually only one way it should fit smoothly. So I think his is a little bit wonky. Interesting. Okay, there we go. That's in pretty good. All right, we're gonna go ahead and do the upper links, as they would be called, first. And these are easy to notice. Now, this is why I was saying to do the bend ends on the outside, because where it's hitting the chassis itself, they actually move out. If you do it the other way, it doesn't sit just right. So if you looked at the old links themselves, they're not actually bends, but if you look back here on the 3-link, oops, these are actually bent inward, just like these are supposed to. Now there's going to be a little hair rub on a couple on my SCX 10. I've put a little washer back here, but I've used longer screws. Right now we're just going to do this way for right now. Alright, so I've got the upper links on, and like I was saying before about the mounts for the rock sliders themselves, this is where I noticed a problem. If you screw these in too tight, you're going to just push straight through the plastic, and then your rock slider is going to come off, and you're going to be all ticked on the trail because it's, you know, acting weird. So that would be a good place to put an aluminum set on there. I would not go with a plastic one. So let's go ahead and get these upper links on. And these should thread in pretty easily. If you have any binding issues, go ahead and recheck or readjust your ball end in there. And that's usually where it hangs up. And that's about it. So, ready to get about tight. It's real good right there. Let's go ahead and flip over and do the other side. Now I'm using my driver here to try to push the side of the ball, and it usually falls right into place with a little bit of finesse. But a lot of times I can push and get through the hole. And once you do these a few times, if you have to do some repairs or whatnot, the holes line up well enough to where you can almost shove the screw all the way through and then screw it all the way in. Upper links are actually hitting the chassis, so I'm going to go ahead and try and, well, on camera, I'm looking at this here. I'm trying to flip this and try to put a spacer in there that will actually allow it to sit out further. I got a few extra parts from Axial that we're not going to be using for our setup here. Okay, so I can go out a pretty good bit. All right, let's go ahead and grab one of these spacers. We'll stick it back there. All right, so we're going to go ahead and replace these with a little bit longer screw from that Axial is supplying the kit and see if we can't solve this problem. We'll match it up and see if we've got a long enough screw that I've pulled out. Yep, we've got a lot longer of a screw, so we're going to go ahead and use that one and go ahead and put it back together. Just for the moment in time here, I'm going to go ahead and pull the bottom link out so I've got room to get the pliers in there. All right. Go ahead and stick this on there. All right, so I've gotten the nut on there pretty well, but I don't want to ruin the rock slider mount, so I'm going to back it out to where it's just about snuggish. And I'm going to grab a hold of it with my pliers so that I can tighten it up. And since the bolt is going through a piece of plastic on the inside of the frame rail, I don't want to have to tighten down too tight and mess that up. So there we go, folks. It looks like we've gotten that fixed. We got a lot more room on this side than on here. All right, folks, as you can see, I've gotten both of the links on there, and we're going to flip the suspension around here, and we are good. Let's go ahead and do the shocks themselves. And like I explained a minute ago, the shocks are held on. We want to put them up in the front a little bit, but we're going to use the aluminum spacers just to give it a nice little clean look. All right, there's one side. Grab another spacer. Let's take a look at this. We got it all done. I'm stuck by a wire over here. And we got full flex on that, and yeah, now she's running a lot better. So now we got the rear done. Let's go ahead and jump over to the front. The front's a little bit more involved. We're gonna go ahead, let's see here. We're gonna start with, we gotta pull just about everything off the front. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, but I'll explain to you where we're gonna go first. First, we're gonna go ahead and take the lower links off first, then we're gonna take the upper links off at their point themselves, take the shocks off again, and then we're also gonna disconnect the steering linkage right in here. See if we can get a little bit better on the camera there. Oh, wrong way. All right, so up in here, we need to remove that screw itself because we're going to be replacing this link itself and then this front link right here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera real quick. We're going to go ahead and one thing I wanted to mention that we got to take the whole servo off. All 4 of these screws got to come off, and then the mount for the links underneath. We're going to go ahead and replace the 3 link in here with the 4 link that we built earlier in the video. All right, so jump right in right here. One thing to remember once I've gotten to this point is that there's 2 little screws that go on the outside here, and that the screws that are already in here can be used for it, but they'll screw into the little tabs right there. So you want to feed this in nice and easy, just right on in. Go ahead and stick it that way, and just screw it back in. All right, so I'm going to jump in here and give you guys a little bit of information on something what I'm doing here. We're doing the steering linkage itself. Some people have said that they like having to run it below. The steering arm itself is going to sit on top here and connect to the servo. What I truthfully like doing is running it up top. The reason for that is, one, it gives you a little bit better of a crawling angle. You can your approach angle where your bumper sits and what you run into, it's up higher, which will damage this less and will allow you to steer a lot better, and it just keeps something a lot neater and a lot more up off the ground. So we're going to go ahead and install that itself. Now with this, you do want to remember that you're going to have an extremely long screw and put maybe some spacers in here to get your steering link set right. If you have your link set, and we're going to go a little sideways here, if you have them set close together and your angle's way up here, you're gonna have binding in your steering itself. So adding a spacer in here to bring it up a little further might allow it to be a little bit straighter. Now this is a little exaggerated. The benefit here though is that the balls don't actually hit the sides, but here and with that, if you have it too high, the screw going through there is just going to flex on the bottom plastic right here, and you're just not going to get the full capabilities out of your steering itself. The other thing is that you want to remember to put your screw in upside down. The reason for that is that you don't want it to be hitting, there's going to be a little bit left over on it. You don't want it to be hitting the rocks and everything. So you want everything below your axle to be as clean as possible so you don't get any hang up. Alright y'all, so you can see that we got the whole suspension back together and all that, so we're going to go ahead and mount the servo tray. Now, when you took apart your previous setup, you had 3 bolt holes, and with the 4-link on here, you're not going to use 2 of those bolt holes, so we just got to use 2 of them. Or, sorry, you're going to just use 2, you're not going to use 1 of them. And yes, it will hold just fine. You don't need that other hole. Trust me, all the stuff that I put mine through, you're not going to be needing it. Alright, we're going to go ahead and clear a little space here. Give me that. So that we can go ahead and put the rest of the chassis back together and we'll bring the chassis back in. Okay, we want to go ahead and first mount the servo itself. Now, you want to look at if you've left your steering arm on. Now, one of the better things to do to give yourself a little bit better steering is to give yourself an aluminum mount here, and they're pretty dang cheap. You can find them at the local hobby store. For those of you who are using the SCX servos, which is what I would definitely suggest, you're looking for a Futaba spline. These tactic ones, they do pretty good. The stock ones are great, but when they do finally go out, I would suggest getting the waterproofed SCX Metal Gear ones. They're very cheap. They're in the $30-ish range, depending on your store where you get them from. But you want to look at it and verify that you got it going the right direction. Now, as you can see here, we've actually got it backwards, which means that I just kind of messed up because I looked at my own rig. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the steering link back apart and fix that little mess up. All right, everybody. So I've repaired my little mess up here. So we're gonna go ahead and install the servo on here and get this thrown in here. One reason why I'm not installing the link right now, I'm doing the servo first because it just gets too cumbersome to do that all at once. So, all right, we got the steering all hooked up again. moving nice and smooth. And that's what I was saying about the whole extra twist on it. And with the plastic standard knuckles here, you're gonna get that no matter what you do. Do you want to put aluminum there? Maybe not. I don't actually have aluminum on mine, but I find that it does give it enough little bit of a twist so that it doesn't break anything. Usually when you add a very stiff point like that, you break more pieces. Luckily with the 4-link, it's a good setup to where the aluminum is functional and not a hindrance itself. So let's go ahead and throw this in here. Again, we're going to go ahead and hook the drive shaft up first. And then with this one, we're going to go ahead and put everything off to the side. And we're going to mess with these inner links again and see if we have to do like we did on before, about where we had to put the washers in there. Now from the looks of it right now, it looks like everything's going to flow right. I won't know until I actually put the other one on. Yeah, from the looks of it, everything's still a little binding. So we're going to try and see if we can find a screw that's a little bit longer and go ahead and do the same thing we did in the back with a little spacer. So we'll come. All right, everybody, I've found much longer screws to be able to use for the to be able to put the spacers in. So we're going to have to go ahead and throw those in here. Yeah, I know they're not black and it doesn't fit with it, but we're having to deal with what we have. All I'm doing here is basically bring the screw in a little bit so that I can keep the spacer in, because as you're screwing, or as you're putting it together here, couldn't think of a nice clean way to say that, the spacer likes to fall out a lot, and that way it just keeps things more stable and you don't get frustrated with it. Alright, the links are in, got no binding, everything's moving right, drive shaft's not hitting. We're at an extreme angle here that the shocks can't give you right now, but we are hitting the drive shaft a little bit. But in the movement that we're going to have with the shock setup we've got, we're not going to have any binding anywhere in there. So let's go ahead and flip them around and stick the shocks back on. Go ahead and we're going to put the aluminum spacers in there again, and we're going to set these a little bit back so he gets a little bit better of a shock geometry so that it crawls better. Alright folks, there we go. Full SCX 10 Honcho 4-link upgrade suspension is done. Every piece that can go with it, 4-link in the rear, 4-link up front with the aluminum front steering arms and all that. So, and as you can see that he's got a lot of flex and nothing's binding and hitting. Yep, there we go guys. This is Trailside Stu. I appreciate you watching BBC Outdoors. Stay tuned, we're going to have a few more upgrade videos. We're going to go ahead and put the Metal Gear transmission, or Metal Gears in the transmission here. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you out there.